How did you get to the point of accountability? Because that's what I heard you. You didn't use the word, but you described it when you said you recognized that you were the problem. How did you get there? Because um, it's it's become pretty much a running meme now about women and accountability and just being allergic to it. Like you can find all kinds of jokes on just women running away from accountability, and it's a real problem because when you are the one, you are the source of everything that you don't like in your life, and you don't recognize it, you never get out of it. Like
Right.
you know, you the experience that you have in life is a product of the decisions that you make, and if you do not recognize that, and instead everything is somebody else's fault, everything is something happened to you, and you're just the innocent victim, um, you're never going to find happiness that way. So, how did you get to a place where you were able to look in the mirror and say, you know what, you need to change something? Oh, yeah. Where's my notes? I almost punted on this one. Where's my notes? Because after I was looking at it, I was like, man, do I want to discuss this topic? Is this going to create more problems than it solves? And I said, whatever. Just we'll just roll with it and see what happens.
You talking about people saying something?
I'm talking about people who look like you saying something.
Okay.
Basically, people that suffer from what we're going to be discussing. One of the and that's pretty much how it's going this evening. Like the show has started for the folks joining us. I didn't even start the Zoom. I don't think anybody signed up for it. I ain't even gonna look. I'm not worried about it. I don't think we should do this live anymore. One, for a couple of reasons. One, because then that gives us more flexibility with the time. I would rather do it a little earlier if possible.
Okay.
Was doing it at 7 to accommodate people who will be participating live, but that puts it like at the very end of my day because I get up early. So then this is like, your phone after it gets to the 20% level and then it goes. So, so uh, I'm just keeping it real. Every show I'm at 20%, 15%, 10%, or whatever, just by the virtue of the time when we start. So if we started earlier, um, that gives us one flexibility any day during the week to record it, and then we just publish it, and then also I'll just have better energy level, not just energy, but cognitive facilities. Cause again, we're at 15%. So, like I said, we just folks are getting a little look behind the curtain. This episode,
Okay.
I'll just do a quick intro. I'm Lindsay Ruffin, marketing strategist and small business advisor. This is the Mind Your Business Show, where we help you get your mind right so you can get your money right. My co-host is Marsha Evans, licensed professional counselor. Marsha Evans. Marsha's been in practice for 12, 13, 14 years. How many years now, Marsha?
I've been in practice going on 14 years.
Okay. So, yeah, she's been in the game for quite some time as a professional. So, she knows her stuff. She's also got a YouTube channel. What's your channel, Marsha?
It's Marsha Listens.
At Marsha Listens on YouTube. So, youtube.com/at Marsha Listens. I'll pop it up on screen. I don't even know why I'm spelling it out. And put a link. More importantly, there will be a link in the description box to Marsha's channel where she's going to talk specifically about mental health. And this evening's topic that I have some apprehension about even discussing is what was it? Superwoman schema,
Yes.
which is disproportionately or having is either disproportionately or having a disproportionate impact, disproportionately affecting in terms of how pervasive it is, and also a disproportionate impact in terms of the consequences of it on Black women. It
Why are you
is
apprehensive?
because of the nature of this. One of the symptoms that I've learned from just the article that originally triggered this discussion, one of the symptoms is irritability. A symptom of depression is irritability, and that manifests in defensiveness and combativeness and
Right.
just perpetually triggered by everything. And so, as a business coach, what I've seen is that there's a whole contingent of women, Black women, who are uncoachable because they cannot process anything other than praise and approval. Any correction or suggestion of a different way to do things or an opportunity for improvement, absolutely everything is processed as an attack. So even having this conversation with the objective of helping and being presenting solutions to some very real significant problems. A lot of women walking around, a lot of Black women walking around in a state of significant pain and unhappiness and overwhelm because of the burden of having to be the strong Black woman, invincible, just reaching her bag of Black girl magic and make everything better no matter what. And they're suffering mightily as a result. And that stress uh, is making it's like a a disease that's making itself even worse. The isolation that it creates, because when you cannot accept anything other than praise or validation, when you can't accept any kind of critique or coaching or guidance or suggestions or anything from anybody, then what you've done is isolated yourself. And now you have to do everything by yourself because nobody can help you because they can't get close to you because you're fighting everybody off. And so it's just a self-reinforcing, very negative situation to be in. And it just, it's like, there's almost no way to, from my perspective, that's why I was just like, man, do I even want to talk about this? There's almost no way to even try to address it in any way, try to work towards a solution or even just have a conversation without it being processed as an attack. And then you got to deal with all of that stuff. Like, it's just like, man, why? Why would he even do? Why would I even do this? And so that's why, it was initially because it was my idea, and then I was like, damn, is this another one of my bright ideas that ain't so bright? Maybe I need to
What? You
just.
have some of those?
Oh, I have a lot of them.
Oh.
I usually am able to identify them myself, or yeah, I've gotten good at it because I've had enough of them that I can just kind of play stuff out in my mind and go, yep, that's not going to work out. And that's what happened with this. I was like, after I was, you know what? This is probably not going to work out. So that was why, that was where the apprehension came from and still is here. Just like, I don't even know if I want to even talk about this, but what, Marsha Evans, is Superwoman schema?
Man, Superwoman schema is, when I think about it from a being a licensed professional counselor and then being someone that has subscribed to that, um, hmm, it it is it's this character that I myself and I know many other people that look like me decide to embrace the role that sets them up for failure ultimately, um, in very aspects of their life. And I think it's really hard for one to seek help and one to look in the mirror and realize that they're the issue or the problem, until life decides to knock one down.
So we just need to pause for a second because Amazon just delivered a package and it's nighttime. If I leave it out there, we know how that goes. Okay. See, that's another reason why this ain't supposed to. Shouldn't be doing this at the end of the day. This like the
We, it's okay.
least
Okay, hold on.
least professional production I've ever done.
So hold on. So let's just freestyle. Like if you don't want, like the universe keeps talking to you.
All right. That's kind of what this was anyway. So we're going to roll with it and see what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, just
So
yeah, just freestyle. No.
we have gotten our Superwoman schema definition. Superwoman schema defined. How are we? So I've communicated a little bit of how I've seen it in my work as a business coach. It what I see is, and we've talked about this before in previous episodes. What I see is these women who come from corporate America. They advance to a certain point and can't. They realize they're not going to go any farther, and they quit and start businesses. And probably the number one mistake that I see is the attempt to do everything themselves. I'm gonna do it all by myself. I'm gonna do this and that and da da da. And you just cannot succeed in business that way. And it's I want to say I don't know where they're getting it from, but I do. They're getting it from each other. Like everybody's coming out and trying to do the same thing. I'm going to be strong and independent and do it by myself. No other groups are doing that. Nobody else is trying to win in business doing everything by themselves the way Black women are doing it, attempting to do it and struggling and failing to do it because you just can't. You cannot succeed in business by yourself. So I see the trying to do everything by yourself. I see the insecurity. And what comes from the insecurity is the combativeness or defensiveness when any suggestion of a correction or an opportunity to improvement exists. Even, I'm not talking about unsolicited. I'm talking about within the context of a coaching relationship, still not being able to accept anything but praise. It's like sometimes they sign up and think they're paying for a cheerleader. That's not what a coach is. A coach is not a cheerleader. If you're messing up or failing to meet your potential, because that's what you hire a coach for, to help you maximize your potential, help you achieve a specific objective. And if you are failing to do the things that you're supposed to be doing, or you're making this much progress when the opportunity was this much progress, a good coach is not going to celebrate you putting forth 15% effort. That's just not, you acknowledge progress, but not mediocrity. and no effort. And
Right.
I don't acknowledge lack of effort. Like if you just doing the bare minimum and you want to celebrate that because okay, well what about that person? They're doing nothing. Well, if you comparing yourself to zero, you always gonna look good. So that's I'm not I'm not about comparison to zero. I'm about comparison to what you're capable of doing in this short amount of time that we have on this earth. You know, I have a real respect for time, and I encourage people to the people around me to maximize what their abilities are because you're not going to have these abilities forever. You just not. And I see so many women business owners, black women business owners in particular, who have the capacity to do so much more to create a better life for themselves. And they're unable to do it because they don't know what they need to do and they cannot be told anything. And so you're stuck where you are because you don't know what you don't know and you ain't gonna listen to nobody. So these are the things that I see where the superwoman schema is just like it just creates cascading and compounding problems. And I don't know how the people suffering from it can get out of it. And they don't either. And we're starting to see that with more and more people having candid conversations about mental health issues. Um, there's some real problems here, and I can see them and describe
Mhm.
them from my perspective, but I cannot offer any solutions because I don't have that skill set. So I'm hoping that you can provide some guidance to women who recognize that they may be suffering from this condition and want to do something about it.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's really important is one, it's identifying that they're wearing the the cape, the costume, and two, realize that they're in survival mode. I think that's really big. When you realize you're in survival mode, your cortisol levels are high. And so when if somebody is interacting with you, Lindsay, and you're coaching them and they're not realizing that you're help, they're going to try to make sure that they are surviving. They're not realizing that um, they're in survival mode and they should be in living mode. And I think one of the big things, I know self care is still a buzzword, but I think self care is really important. And I truly believe that it gets one out of survival. It gets them out of the costume, out of this uniform that one wears, um, and really looking at the things that don't bring harmony to their lives. A lot of times, women are constantly running and running and running and not trying to slow down to recognize their insecurities. And something that I think is really important is slowing down and understanding that whatever you're running from will eventually catch up to you. And I rather one slow down on their own than being forced to slow down through their body because their body is saying you're not recognizing. But I think it's really important. Self care is really important and slow down. I think it's being able to raise the hand around insecurities. What does that look like around comparison? I know that when I slowed down myself, I realized that I didn't want to be found out that I had my insecurities, that I wasn't perfect, that the go getter was me running away from my insecurities and the things that I didn't like about myself. Um, I think it's really having a talk with yourself and or other people. Like I didn't start seeking coaching and mentoring until maybe truly like 4 or 5 years ago. And so for the first 9 years in my business, I put my head down and I did it by myself and it wasn't fun. But I made sure one of the things I really invested in was self care. It was how can I take a pause. One of the things that I am really good at is just trying to analyzing myself. But I had two people. I've had two people that I've talked to during that time that I needed to become a little bit more softer. I needed to understand me because there was places I wanted to go and I wasn't getting there.
One of the things you talked about, you said something briefly about was the need to feel perfect or going after perfection. I can't remember what the words were you, but I see that a lot. Uh, I, I I don't know if that's a woman thing or if it's a black woman thing. I think it's probably women overall. I've seen because I've had clients that are not black women that still have problems with setting perfection as a goal and just feeling like everything has to be at perfection level in order to present it to the world, and that just does not work in business. you you're never going to have perfection with your product or your services, and so if you're setting that as your standard, then you never put anything out, and you don't make money. You're not helping anybody because you're trying to you have this perfect product in your mind and it exists only there. So can you talk a little bit about that feeling, that need to be perfect, or feeling like the requirement is that you be perfect? Where is that coming from? And more importantly, what can women do about that? What can they do to address it? Because I don't, well, I won't say I don't know any guys that aspire for perfection, but typically that's that's more the exception than the rule. When
Mm,
the men that I'm coaching, we'll just get rolling with something, get something out the door, and then we'll build on top of that. And it's rare that a man that I've worked with is reluctant to start because of aspirations for perfection. But almost all of the women, it just they they want everything to be perfect before they put anything in front of the world, and those and you just never get there. So
right.
yeah, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think some of that perfection, what I've seen for myself and other women, is that women can be very judgmental. I mean, people, period, can be very judgmental. And one of the things that I've seen and I've witnessed for myself is that when I see something put out there by other people, I may have this judgmental thought about that. And so then when I think about putting out my stuff, then I'm thinking that people are having the same thought process I had about another product or something else that was put out there. So it's this double-edged sword where my judgmental thoughts about something or someone, I'm thinking somebody's gonna have the same thought about me, so then it keeps me it's holding me hostage from just putting something out there. And so then it just keeps me in this place of I have to create something that's perfect when perfection doesn't exist. Um, I know, for example, like growing up, play basketball. When I got older in my teenage years, I didn't really care for watching women's basketball because there was these certain mistakes that women basketball players would make professionally that I felt like those mistakes were of high school. But then when I sat and thought about it, I'm like, they they worked really hard to get to that position and to that level. And it's not easy. It's not even easy playing collegiate basketball. So I think the judgmental thoughts that one has, as I've worked with women and even myself, I think that is a mechanism that stops one from just putting it out there, the reluctancy. And then I think one of the things is the way that I've moved through it and that I worked with women to move through it is really sitting down and thinking about those judgmental thoughts that they have of another person or another situation around somebody's product or somebody's situation, and really having an inner dialogue around that of why are you judging them? What is that? And then it really turns back onto them of what where did those judgmental thoughts came come from? What can they do to really start putting the mirror up to their faces of that perfection? Where does the perfection come from? Sometimes the perfection can come from their parents, of them wanting them to be perfect, or if if they were raised in church. And so being able to pinpoint where that mindset really derived from is a really good place to start from. Of, okay, growing up in a Catholic church or going to church, there was these commandments. There were, you had to, what is it? It's not respect thy mother. It's obey, right? Is it right? Obey? Is it obey the
That's
mother and father?
uh, man, I went to Catholic school. That was a long time ago.
So it's something like that, right? And so when one really starts to look at where did
You going to hell? Just, but go ahead,
how do we not know that hell is right now?
cause I'm here.
Oh, oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Oh,
That's right.
oh man, I love it. I love it. But I think it really is finding some of those birthplaces of those judgmental thoughts, um and being perfect, right? I grew up in a Baptist church, and I remember, if I disrespected my mother, I would think God was going to come and strike me down and I'd be taken away. I would die the next day, right? And so, really thinking about that level of perfection or the expectations, the expectations for me was like, oh, that wasn't ladylike growing up. And when we start thinking about those labels and those expectations from our communities, from our households, I think that can really start giving you answers to where the perfectionist mindset came from. And everybody's can be different, but then I think being able to pull back the layers can help one really discover why they really practice this level of perfectionism, and how they can go about peeling it back and really getting rid of some of those layers that they don't need anymore.
Okay. What can we see? This is another. That's why I didn't want to do. Because you touched on it briefly, but one of the things that I see that I know is a contributor to this perfectionism thing is the withering scrutiny that women hold each other to. Um, that is not. It's like mean girl behavior that y'all never seem to outgrow. How do we, if women would give each other more grace, that would take off so much pressure. But I don't know how. Like, how's that even possible?
I think it starts with vulnerability. I think it starts with I think it starts with raising one's hand and saying, "My shit stinks. I'm not perfect." I have to say, being in different spaces with women, playing collegiate basketball, um, and having a common goal with 11 other women, right? Um, we didn't have any time for that cattiness, we didn't have any time for that, but I one of the things that I truly believe is that we have to look in the mirror and say that, "Hey, I do this," or, "Hey," just being vulnerable with yourself first and then being able to be vulnerable with other women. I know that when I started doing that, I've created a community of supportive women that look like me that I can go to and say I need help, or
Mm,
that's willing to help me get to where I need to go. But I had to raise my hand and say, my shit stinks. And once I started doing that, I've tapped into my feminine in ways that I never have. And the universe only really supplies me with women that are supportive, that want to see me do good, that think of me and that can't wait to the place, that really celebrates me every step of the way. And if I'm fucking up, they'll be like, "Hey, what do you need help with? What's going on?" But it really took me in raising my hand and saying, I'm the issue." And it also took me um with took me of allowing my mom, really accepting my mom for who she is. And so when I accept my mom for who she is at the soul level and she gave me the best gift possible, which is life, I started really accepting myself as a woman, um, and accepting what my mom's given me in the gift of being a woman. I think that is the answer and the solution of raising one's hand and saying that you're not perfect. I don't care what you can do, but really looking at the good, bad, and the ugly of yourself. And I can't really talk about any woman that's around me. They've helped me in so many different ways. But before, if it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, like it wouldn't be that. So I've grown into being a woman of I've really grown into my womanhood.
how did you get to the point of accountability? Because that's what I heard you. You didn't use the word, but you described it when you said you recognized that you were the problem. How did you get there? Because um, it's it's become pretty much a running meme now about women and accountability and just being allergic to it. Like you can find all kinds of jokes on just women running away from accountability, and it's a real problem because when you are the one, you are the source of everything that you don't like in your life, and you don't recognize it, you never get out of it. Like
Right.
you know, you the experience that you have in life is a product of the decisions that you make, and if you do not recognize that, and instead everything is somebody else's fault, everything is something happened to you, and you're just the innocent victim, um, you're never going to find happiness that way. So, how
Right.
did you get to a place where you were able to look in the mirror and say, you know what, you need to change something?
How I got there. So I had this desire. It's a journey because it was a journey and it's still a journey, right? But I had this desire to be soft, soft around the edges. I knew that I was very hard around the edges. I knew I could approach life very aggressive. And that's when I sought help. And I knew that I was the issue, but I knew that there was a place that I wanted to be. And so I started having people, my therapy, like my spiritual guide, two people really holding the mirror to my face. The first person I worked with intensely for 2.5 years, and she was exactly who I am, like the aggression part of it. She gave me what I put out 10 times 10 times worse, right? And what I'm saying by that, it was like I couldn't get around her. If I'd be like, I don't want to do that, she would give me the same energy that I would give her. And it really showed me how I presented to the world. And she guided me through how I was showing up and how that got in the way. And so once I found her, I made sure that there were other people in my life that would hold the mirror up to my face of like, hey, Marsha, do you see this? Um, and so I just made sure that I would have people around me, even if it was, coaches like yourself, that would tell me when I was like not doing it right or I was bullshitting or I think about when you're like, "Hey, just write a guide," and then I wrote something. He was like, hold on, motherfucker. What are you doing? Like you're made up of this." And one of the things that I've been scared of and my insecurity is for somebody to see all of me, for fear that they would hurt me. And when I started thinking about what I wanted to do in my lifetime and how I wanted to help people help themselves, I couldn't be fearful of the gifts that I've been given in this lifetime. I didn't want to if we think that we're going to go to heaven or whatever, I didn't want to I didn't want God or the higher being saying, "Hey, you didn't do these things that I gave you the ability to do." I wouldn't want to I wouldn't want to my soul to transition and be like, "Hey, you got to go back or be punished." And when I started really thinking about that and thinking about the people who have not been given the gifts that I've been given, I had to sit back and think that I'm wasting away just because of my fear. Um, and that I needed to sit down and really think about how I needed help. And since I've really started getting help, I can really step into my gifts in a different way. And there are some people in my life, close people, that don't understand my gifts, and I still have to show up and complete the assignment. And I think that that's hard for people because they want to be connected to their families, but it's not about their families, it's about their life assignment. And sometimes that's hard to digest. And so they'll be like, I have these things to check, these boxes to check off for their family and for others. And then it gives them excuse of why they couldn't complete the assignment that they've been given. And I think that creates excuses. Um, and so I think just the accountability is when I started to be seen by people, I started realizing that I needed that in my life. I think about, I've been coached since I was 6, um, be it soccer, be it gymnastics, be it basketball, softball. I've been coached since that time, so I do know what it's like to be in compliance and then what it's like to be out of compliance. Um, but I've been able to my goal at 12 was to get a scholarship, and I did that, and so I do know how to follow a program, but I also do know how to buck at a program. And so I think that one of the things for me was, really having people around me that see me and that see my light, and that see me going further than I see myself, was really important.
Yeah, that's that's something a a lot of people, women in particular, 'cause I'm just calling it like I see it. Again, I didn't even want to do this, and this is why. But the what you're describing is putting yourself around people who are going to challenge you and make you better. And what I see more commonly is the desire to surround themselves with people who are going to make them feel good. And sometimes that's by surrounding yourself with people who are less skilled, less gifted, and by doing so, you can operate at 20% of your ability and still be doing better than them. So you feel like you're doing good relatively speaking, but again, what are you comparing it to? So yeah, the it takes some real growth and enlightenment to surround oneself by people who are going to challenge you to be your best and call you out when you're not. So I applaud you on that. And that's
Thank you.
something that a lot of women just don't have it in them right now. It's not that they can't get there, but the choice that they make is not to surround themselves with people who, a challenging circle or a challenging network, but rather one where they just feel good. Just,
Yeah.
cheerleaders.
It's, and something that I would do at a young age would be around older people. S- And in being around older people, it gave me an opportunity to see how they did life. Um, but I also had a tendency to isolate myself. Uh, at a young age, I wasn't going out to party. I just knew that I wanted to go to college and play basketball. I wanted to be able to I was focused. There was this level of focus. But even then, one of the things that you've helped me discover, um, I don't always apply myself. And I've been very fearful of if I applied myself to 90%, what life would look like. And that's what I'm even working through now. Um, I just think it's these levels that people who look like myself have to go through, but I know the healing process is very daunting and hard. And I think it's how to create a village around them of other people that are going through a healing space, going through healing and being active and intentional. And I have to say that when I started being vulnerable and searching and wanting people to be around me in that space, I've attracted other women who are along the journey. They might be behind me or in front of me, but it's dope to speak the same language, and have somebody to encourage or to like feel the vibration that I'm stepping more into my space. But it really goes back to being vulnerable. It really goes back to raising their hand and saying, I'm not perfect. Um, just even starting there, or really being able to have somebody like yourself of like, what the hell are you doing? And not being mad. But then it goes back to what if they have a hard time dancing with you, what's their relationship like with their father? Did they ever have a man in their life speaking to them that way of certain wanting certain things out of them? My dad would tell me I couldn't cry in front of my opponents. Uh, you know? And so I remember one time, so growing up, I played in a co-ed league, and then for 4 years, maybe the last two I played, it was only two other females. Everybody else were males. And I'm talking about at that time, they were like 6'3", 6'4". Um, and we lost. And my dad got so mad at me. He was like, do I see tears coming down your face? And I was like, oh man, right? And I just know that I get what he was saying and I understand what he was saying, but my dad showed me that I could do anything I wanted to do. I used to go to work with him and I used to work with him on his 18 wheeler. It was just these things that I didn't doubt myself. He didn't, but there was a certain way that he talked to me that I understood and that I embraced and that it was very straight to the point. He used to tell me, he was like, if you stop moving, understand you're going to gain weight. And so if you don't want to gain weight, you better keep moving. Um, And I'm the type of person that I'd rather somebody tell me direct, like, "Oh, you got big. You need to get in the gym." And I can respect that. Where I think that it's hard for women because of our feelings and it's hard for women to tell other women and be really direct. And I think that that's something that's really missing and lacking um, in those spaces for acceleration and healing and accountability and to get past those money blocks and the superwoman phenom.
Schema,
Schema,
which is what we
phenom,
spoke the yeah
mindset.
technical term of it.
Well,
So we talked about irritability being a missed symptom of depression.
yeah.
What are some other symptoms of depression that are commonly missed? And because that I didn't know that until reading this article. That's why we're having this conversation. And so that irritability, that constant state of defensiveness and being triggered, I can see where this is how you end up getting labeled the angry black woman,
Right.
whether you know earned it or not. But there's something to it when if you're always triggered by everything, then you know you gotta accept some ownership there. So, but with that being a symptom of depression, which obviously suggests a need for some form of therapy that we all need, but some groups are more burdened in this country than others, and I don't know anybody who what group would be more burdened by the stress of just day-to-day life in America than black women. I don't know who catches it more than y'all.
Yeah.
Um so with irritability being a missed symptom of depression, what are there any others that you can think of that we might not, just a commonly missed symptom?
Um, so the one thing that I have to say about depression is that it shows up differently on everybody. And I think we've on that article and then even the Good Morning America clip, the segment, um, it shows up differently. And I think sometimes it's so hard, it can be really hard for black women to raise their hand and say, "Oh, this is depression." Um, like you said, you know, the angry black woman, the irritability. I really think it's like a baseline. So the irritability for me, just showing it when I think about irritability, it's not necessarily irritability, right? If there's this level of sadness. And I think that I think there's a level of stress, there's obligation, but I think it really the ebb and flow of depression, I think the ebb and flow of sadness, I think the how can I put it? Some people don't want to call it depression, right? Irritability is one, it is, but I think it could be even sleep, the lack of sleep or too much sleep. Um, it just really depends on the person. It's not necessarily one particular thing that would be underlying that it's hard to figure out. Um, I think there can be anxiousness around the depression. There could be, a lot of times there could be depression and then there could be anxiety around that. I think there can be insomnia. And sometimes I think with Black women, when you hear those words, they run away from it because they don't want to be labeled, because I think there's so many labels sometimes that are placed on Black people, Black women, Black men. And so I know for me in my practice, there's certain things that I stay away from in terms of these um, these words, these go-to words that I think medical profession and mass media go to. But how do we create these words that really communicate to how you feel? Um, and so sometimes I have talked about situational depression or situational anxiety of when you're going to work what does that look like? Do you have Monday blues? What is there anxiousness around going to work? What is being able to get one to explain how they're feeling is really important. And so then that can create the baseline of what are normal feelings and what's something that's triggering you to feel that way. So I as a person I try to stay away from those titles and those symptoms, and then getting one to create their list of what they feel. What is their baseline and then what is it like when they're in certain environments, and what how do we look at compare what their baseline is versus how they're feeling in that environment, so one doesn't feel like they're an experiment or they're a victim or something's wrong with them per se, because then I think that trumps one's treatment. So if somebody says, sometimes people want a title and other times people don't want a title. And so for me, it's like, hey, let's go down this story. Let's have story time and let's figure out how you want to live, how you've been living, and what has contributed to the way you're living now. Um, and I think that getting one to tell their story, and then being, and I think we talked about this, I talked about this last time, is being an observer and not a participant, gets them to start identifying how they've been feeling or how they've been reacting to certain triggers in their environment is really important.
What are some steps that a woman suffering from, or who thinks she may be, probably is because it's so pervasive, suffering from superwoman schema? You know, the need to feel perfect, to be perfect, the I can do it all by myself mindset. What can a woman who recognizes that what we've been describing is her, and to some extent, maybe to a great extent, what are some steps that she can do to move herself towards a happier existence?
That's a good question. I think she needs to go to therapy. I
Okay. So how does that start? How do you do that? If you've never, so you're a therapist, so you've been in the world of therapy from college all the way to now. But
yeah.
for somebody who comes from a family where therapy means you're crazy, so that's what, that's their
Hmm.
relationship with therapy. Where do they begin? How do they start? How do you find a therapist? How does that work? How does she do that?
Yeah. So one thing that she could do, depending on her relationships with people, her friends, I would ask for referrals. If not, she can call like her employment assistant program. And through her employment assistant program, usually they give a range from, now because of COVID, post COVID, they're giving a range from 6 to 9 sessions. They're free. And the EAP program, there's usually somebody that will call the therapist to see if they have openings. And then that EAP coordinator will call back that woman to say, hey, this person has openings. And they will, it's like a very, it could be a smooth transition, a easy handoff if the EAP coordinator is able to get in contact with the therapist. I know that recently I've had an uptick of EAP people reaching out via email and voice calling my phone and leaving a message. Um, and so you can tap into your EAP benefits, or you can go on Psychology Today and really be able to filter out what you're looking for. So if you're looking for an African American woman or man therapist, and then you really have to, depending on your state, you have to make sure you stay in your state unless they are licensed in your state, but they're based out of Texas, because the therapist cannot provide services to a person that's in a state that they're not licensed in. So Psychology Today is a really good place um, to put in your insurance, what you're looking for, um, even if there's a certain language that you may speak. they have the specifics. You could do that, and you can call and you can ask for a consultation to see if they have a consultation. Usually, therapists are supposed to offer like a 15-minute consultation for free, and you can ask questions, thinking about what you like and what you dislike, and seeing what the vibe is. It's just like one of the things that I talk to new people, um, people who are searching for counseling, especially if they have not gone through this process. Something I break down is it's just like going to the shoe store and trying on different shoes. Different shoes have a different fit, and that you can ask any kind of questions that you would want, but it's all about a fit. And if you feel open, um, if you feel like you're open with this person, where you can go to certain places about your life that you wouldn't do with another person. And so you talk to those people and you start setting appointments with them for a consultation, and understand that you have full control. If you don't like that therapist, and I know this kind of goes into the superwoman, the irritability, but if you don't like that therapist, you can actually, or not saying not like, but if you have questions or you don't like their approach, you can actually talk to them about it. And I think that that's one thing that's different from a doctor, a PCP that you might go see. It's a different type of relationship. And when you bring those things up into the session, a lot of times you can go deeper into your work because you brought that into the session and you didn't take it off the table. And so sometimes bringing those things up allows the therapeutic relationship to go deeper, and allows one to explore and discover things that they wouldn't have discovered about themselves any other way. So you can do it that way. I think it's really good, the EAP benefits, because you got it for free. You don't have to pay any copayment. So you just get like these trial sessions to see if you like it, and then after that you can continue with that particular therapist if they take your insurance, um, with using your insurance. So Psychology Today, EAP, referrals, um, and then there's other uh, psychology today, like platforms that we can put it in the link in the
Sure.
below, that really speaks to Black women, Black people, for therapy. So yeah.
So the Psychology Today and similar resources that would work for business owners as well, people who don't have a job, and an EAP coordinator and all of that. That would those resources work for those people?
So Psychology Today, what one can do, there's there's sliding scales. There's therapists that do sliding scales, and then there's some therapists that do pro bono. But it's asking about that when you first have a consultation. And then there's community service boards. In the state of Virginia, there's community service boards that they offer. It's in each county, um, that they offer therapy there as well. And it's a sliding scale. And then there's some clinics that offer free therapy. And then there's counselors and residents that do not have their license just yet, but they're practicing under a therapist, a licensed therapist, that they will provide services at a small fee.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about women who are impacted by this condition. Let's talk about prevention in the next generation. What can a parent of a Black daughter do, or what are some things that they can do to prepare their daughters to navigate the world that they're going to have to navigate without developing superwoman schema, so that she doesn't, think that she has to be perfect and has to do everything by herself, because these women don't just wake up one day like this. This is a process. So that takes place over a span of time. So what can a parent of a black girl do to help her not end up needing all of this remediation that we've been talking about?
That is a good question. So I think this might be a controversy. I think a parent I think a parent has to really look at their own motives of why they may be placing their their daughter into a certain activity, um, a certain school, around certain people. Um, I think they have to think about their own motives, if that makes sense. Like if they're putting them in a predominantly white school, for example, and they're having this conversation with their daughter about they have to be twice as good. Um, I think it really has to come around like what are their motives for the activities that they place their daughter in. It really starts with the parent. If let's just say the mom, if the mom has struggled or is in that space themselves. Lindsay, you got me on that one. I think it really starts with the motives of why and where they place their daughter. Um, and really thinking about the conversations around that and their own judgments. Um, because
Is there
I think
such a Go
huh?
ahead. Go.
No, I just think about, I have an older sibling and I think about where my mom or my parents placed him, even though he's not a girl, a woman, where my parents placed him for school versus me. And then his whole mindset of being a black boy around white people because he was like the token black guy, right? And what was his identity as he's grown up? I just think it goes around one's motives of where they're putting them, and then also what's the support in the village around them. Um, I think for me. I think about that. I think that's a really important to make sure that their daughter doesn't need the remediation. Um, of why are they placing them in certain places.
Have we Is this a thing? Is it possible to become a thing, or is it a good idea to become a thing? Uh, what I'm thinking is um, preventive family therapy. If that's
Mhm.
not a term, that's the term I'm going to use. Where, because if you do nothing, this superwoman thing is going to happen. Is going to happen. So it's like, okay, well, how do you how do you prevent it? How could you possibly prevent it any way other than with preventive therapy? Like, so a trained professional who can see the behaviors developing and then offer uh, early stage intervention, as opposed to a woman 45, 50 years old having to get help unwinding all of that stuff from the last 30 years.
Right.
Uh, I'm wondering, because when after I asked the question that and you started to answer it, and the answer, one answer came to me first was like, well, it's gonna start with mama getting herself right, because if she's not right, like if she's suffering from superwoman identity, that's what her daughter's gonna do. That's just how it is. Mom is the primary teacher for all of us,
Mhm.
and for a daughter, that's who she's going to become. That's who she's going to emulate, whether she wants to or not.
Mhm.
Even if it's not a great relationship, you still, just by virtue of all the time that you spend around your mother, you're going to have some of her traits, maybe a lot of them.
Right.
So the answer, kind of part of the answer to me, was the mom getting the therapy that she needs, and then it's like, well, probably should be the whole family, like some kind of. Are there counselors for an entire family? Like even if there's not like not a problem, but just kind of, hey, like, you know,
Like learning how to communicate, like just
yeah, something, some kind
yeah,
of non-crisis based, just
yeah,
preventive.
there is, but then if they're using their insurance, then it has to be medical necessity and all that stuff. So, um, there is just for maintenance. I think it's really important. I started going to counseling at 16, and my mom was like, I think my mom started talking about counseling for me at 12, and I was like, "Well, put me in there." And then I used to drive myself to counseling because I just wanted understanding of certain things that were happening in my family. I think that we would have done so much better as a family if we went as a family, um, to understand people. But you can go to therapy as families and just navigate because the kids are changing daily, and then the personalities of the parents, you're making these adjustments, and the kids are actually triggering the parents on things that they need their own healing from, because that's what kids will do. Kids will force the parent's hand to heal and face things that they didn't want to face before they had children.
Okay.
And so sometimes that's where crises come in because some parents don't want to face it. And then that's when either a kid becomes a behavioral issue or have some mental health issues. Not all, but that's what I've seen.
We're gonna we're gonna revisit this another time, but we're gonna do it with one or two parents, because this, I think, is a discussion that deserves more than just a couple of minutes we just gave it. And also, you need some parents here to ask the parent questions, that, because yeah, that's yeah, that's
I see a
something
light
that you
bulb.
can explore on. No, that was not the light bulb.
We thinking about a questionnaire and everything?
No, not a questionnaire. I can just put you in touch with some parents, and you know some too. Um, but yeah, that's just that would be something to good to put on your YouTube channel, that
Okay.
maybe explore in 2 or 3 videos. I don't know,
Okay.
but it needs more attention than we just gave it. But that was a good that's a good seed for something else, because I know the parents who I had in mind with that question did not get everything they needed right there. So we can give them some more later.
Okay.
Um, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. For women who want help, and for some reason they like you,
Hmm.
what resources do you offer? How can they contact you? If so, how? What do you offer for women who like the message that you've delivered this evening, and would like more information from you?
You can click the link to schedule a discovery call. I have something called Family Anchors that that goes back to the conception of you and before you were thought of, to understand what's in your bag, what's been given to you from your ancestors, so you can make educated choices for your life instead of just walking not knowing why you're making the choices you're making. And so in that space, we discover and we navigate and we go back into time to figure out why certain things are showing up the way they are. And so that's in family anchors. And then in family values, we talk about money blocks. I know we talked about Superwoman schema, but we talk about money blocks. So if you're a businesswoman who it's really hard for you to push through these money blocks, that has everything to do with your family system that you come from. And so we explore that and we move through that space so you can make the money that you desire and deserve. And so you can have this freedom. So that's where
Okay.
you can find me. You'll have the link where you can schedule a call and see if you're a good fit. And if not, then I can send you off to other people that can take good care of you.
Excellent. Is there anything on this topic that we've not covered or that you want to add something to?
Um, no, I just think it's really important to be vulnerable. I think that's I know it's hard to be, but I know in my experience, vulnerability has gotten me where I'm at today. Um, and I wouldn't I know that internally one's battle it's lonely in that space internally, and I wouldn't want anybody to go through that, even my worst enemy if I have one. Um, but vulnerability is the way to push yourself to the other side. It's really important because you have things to do in this world. So
Okay.
yeah.
To that, I would just add, you know, be careful, or for some folks are going to need to make better choices about the people you have around you in order for vulnerability to be a bridge to somewhere better. Because if you're in need of healing and part of the condition you're in right now is that you've surrounded yourself with the wrong kind of people, then vulnerability is not going to get you anywhere. It's going to get you exploited. So, um, I would add, as far as with the critique and um, being able to accept critique and look at who's giving it to you and what their motivation is, even if you don't like what they're saying, because this is gonna some folks are going to need to carry this with them into their journey into counseling.
Mhm.
Just because you don't like what somebody said doesn't mean that it's not true and that you
Right.
didn't need to hear it. So don't disqualify a therapist because they tell you you need to do some work on yourself. That's their job. If you went there just because you wanted a hug, that's not what they do. And if you hire a business coach like me, it's not our job to hand out hugs either.
Yeah.
You gotta, some people are in your life to give you hugs. You gotta surround yourself with those people. And some people are in your life to challenge you to be the best that you're capable of being. And you have to respect the privilege of having people like that who will push you to be the best you can be so that you can enjoy the life that you're capable of enjoying. It's not people challenging you just because they want to be mean or whatever. It's they're trying to help you. You can if you can enlighten yourself and rise above just a knee jerk reaction to hearing something that you just didn't like, and then actually analyze what this person is saying, where they're saying it from. Are they benefiting in any way by telling you this thing, or are they telling you something solely for your benefit? And if so, you got to run it through some filters. And if they're telling you something that you needed to hear because they're trying to help you, then those are the kind of people you want to have around yourself, not the kind of people you want to drive away. Because if you drive away all of those kind of people, then who's left? who
toxic
who
people.
who are you left surrounded by? So,
Yeah.
all right, I think we can put down our shovels. The hole is sufficiently deep now. Um, we'll see what comes out of this. I don't not confident anything good is gonna come out of it, but we done did it. So,
Okay.
all right, y'all. This was Mind Your Business, the show we put together to help you get your mind right so you can get your money right. And yeah, hopefully you understand why we did this episode and where we were coming from. And we're trying to help you live your best life. And if you don't see that, then you really do need some therapy. All right, bye.
All right. See ya.